Good morning, almost good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming, and I want to welcome folks on the internet, on the hybrid virtual. It's always fun to do things differently, but I'm so excited to be here with in person, also with folks in the room. Welcome. I hope your Thursday is going well and you have fun with the shakeout. I was reminding myself, wow, this is loud. How do kids do it? And I was like, oh, my inclusion hat went on. And I was like, oh, I cover my ears. And I start thinking, oh, the children that we work with, no wonder they're freaking out because it is freaking loud, right? So we'll talk a little bit about sort of, what does really mean when we are in a teaching space, looking at inclusion and looking at equity. But before I do that, let me introduce myself. My name is YuFang Chien. I am Taiwanese, and I'm a proud immigrant from Taiwan. I came here to study. Thank you. And I just end up staying here and work here, and I'm so happy to call two places my home. I am an early childhood educator focused on special education and inclusion. I have been serving with a nonprofit organization called Ability Path almost 20 years now. I was a teacher. I taught special day classes. I taught inclusion setting. I managed preschool programs. I am very happy now. The last 3 years, I have switched my gear over to instructional coach and really supporting our admin team and our teachers on quality teaching. And really, most importantly, is to shift our minds, how we show up as educators. So, welcome everyone. Just want to understand a little bit who's in the room and also folks on the internet. How many of you are teachers, admin, teacher leadership in different kind of capacities? Okay, awesome, everyone. Awesome. Who's actually direct teaching in the classroom right now? Great. Heroes. Heroes. And people on the chat, please feel free to chat in what you do and your role. So help us together to sort of thinking about our thinking hats. Great. And how many of you run programs? Great, great. That's hard job. Very hard job. Anyone else who's like, I'm just here because I want to learn more about early education? Okay, cool. Great. Well, thanks for coming again. So today, I have a lot of things in terms of sort of thinking about adaptation and modification. And then on the way over here, I recognize it has to do with your program policy as well as your teaching philosophy. So I'm gonna show a little bit of what we do in our preschool program. It might not work for you, it might not work for your program, but my biggest hope is for you to walk away to be thinking, you know what? I am going to do teaching a little bit differently. I hope I can inspire you. I hope we can inspire each other. Because let's just be honest, in our workshop, it's so hard to really dive deeper. But I really also want this to be an open dialogue. So please, if you have any questions or comments throughout the session, just raise your hand in person. People on the internet, please chat in. I have an awesome person, Shirley, here with us to help monitor the whole entire global community. Great. Okay, so before I go deeper, my company, nonprofit, we really, really, truly live with accept, respect, and include. That's our logo. And as a nonprofit, right, we work with many, many families come to us to want to have their kiddos in the inclusion setting. So our first school is in Burlingame and started in 2006. And I was one of the very first 3 teachers sort of help kind of thinking about how can we do inclusion differently. I also want to call out, I recognize 2006 and right now 2022, almost 2023, our teaching staffing and workforce is very different. So the way we think about inclusion and way we really think about how we do those things, it's very much different than even just 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So we have to be very creative. I'm going to address teacher burnout because that's part of inclusion and equity. I want to really talk about how can we have a little bit of mindfulness teaching so we can be intentional. Okay, any questions so far or folks on the internet? Thank you. Thank you for that question. I have my own bias answer, and I'd love to hear folks in the room as well. For me, is I don't think there's worse or better. I think we are met with different challenges, and when I say that is because children are different now. I feel like, at least, again, bias, right? In the area, San Francisco Bay Area, the children and population we serve, right? There's a lot more emphasis on social emotional teaching. And social emotional teaching comes with quote unquote challenging behaviors. And what I look at that is how can we as educators co-regulate with children, right? Rather than maybe blaming or always have a lens of, oh my gosh, the parents are not doing enough, or oh my gosh, we don't have enough support. So I would love for us to think about, when we walk away today, if you're the admin at your program or if you're educators, what do you need for your program to really address mindfulness teaching? I'm really big on mindfulness teaching because I'm also, I have a space where I teach yoga, and I'm a yoga teacher and practitioner, and I really do recognize, even when I'm in a classroom with full of 20-something children and I see teachers so burnt out, and when you just really sit down and talk to educator, they don't have the capacity. So we have to think about how we support that. So when we don't address that, inclusion and equity, they're not gonna show up. Because we don't even look at inclusion and equity for our teachers. So I hope that's fair enough. I don't know. Any thoughts or challenges, or maybe I call them arguments that you think, I'm seeing something a little bit different. Yes, please. Thank you. And you summarize so well, right? Because all really matters is to have time and space to create a collaborative culture in our school system. And collaborative culture creates reform and building capacity for leadership for teachers, so we feel good, we get recognized, and we show up. Most importantly, drives positive outcomes for our children. So that's one of the framework. And again, I'm here to maybe share a little bit of what has worked and what has shifted me as an educator over the last few years to really thinking about how can we do collectively to co-create and co-regulate, so therefore we can continue on this journey of teaching. But I can't be here to say you got to do this or your program needs to think about that, because I recognize there is, again, program policy, people are dealing with budget. So hopefully today, just for you to think about, like, hey, you know what? Maybe we can talk about that. How can we get there, right? Because it's gonna look very different. Great. All right, shall we move on? Okay. We already kind of started about 10 minutes, but I really invite you to take care of yourself. We're all still wearing masks, and that's okay. If you need to walk out, have some breather, bathroom, coffee, whatever that works for you, fidget, tapping, please do that. That's really important. Collectively, we recognize that. And I just invite you to listening for understanding, right? Because we all sometimes have our own idea of what the outcome should be. But if we just be open and understand, I think will be a beautiful world. Then use your voice, please, in chat. Of course, in person, just raise your hand or just talk out loud if you are in person. I believe in 3 things, the 3 E's that I always carry with me when I work with teachers and educators, and also myself: empower, embody, and involve. We have to empower ourselves that we are teaching, we have effective instruction, then we can really embody the philosophy of inclusion and equity, then we can continue to involve. For me as educator, if I am not able to keep growing in the field and feel good about myself, I don't know if I can show up in the classroom, right? So I hope you'll feel good. And I have a slide, but I cannot delete it, but this reminds me, like superheroes, to me, you're all superheroes. An educator really, like, all of a sudden we become, essential workers, right? You're superheroes, but superheroes need help. So I really encourage everyone also today kind of think about, what do I need as educator when I go back to be effective? Do I need more support? Do I need to talk to the therapist that my kiddo is working with? Do I need to build more relationship with families? Or do I really need to look into myself? When am I so stressed out? I don't know. So I invite you to think about those things. My ultimate goal today is really provide a space for us collectively and individually to reflect and learn. And I hope you will walk away with some strategies and tools you can think about. And a couple framework that we'll be talking about around co-teaching. Then please, question as we go, answer as we go, but really want to have engagement with everyone in the room and also over the chat. So I invite you to play, and folks on the chat, please just type words. So I invite you to think about what words come to mind when you think about children with unique needs in the classroom. It can be a verb, it can be emotion, anything come to mind. Maybe just 1 or 2 words. If you have more than that, that's great. And if you already have some, please just share aloud. Accommodation. Thank you. I love that. Opportunity. And I encourage everyone, as the words come, embody that and feel that. Curiosity. Isn't that what we do as educators? We're so curious, but we get to shy away from doing new things. I'm one of those sometimes. Fear. I love that. That's so real. How many of you, when you hear, oh, you have a kiddo coming to a classroom, and this child has ABA, and recently just got diagnosed with autism? Like, what does that like show up in your body, right? Anxious. Someone say something else? I would say stress, expectation, and I'll think challenging behaviors. That's what we do. Oh my gosh, I cannot do this. I did a word cloud. We didn't do a word cloud today, but it was a beautiful word cloud with another conference that I recently went to. It was joy, pleasant, challenging, fear, opportunity, beautiful. And then when I asked people to really kind of think about those words, we become so empowered with the work that we do. Because we recognize there's some awesome things that we do, but we also recognize the fear comes with we don't have control, right? So we don't have control, what do, right? We shy away from making opportunities. So we will talk a little bit about what support do you really need in order for you to be successful as an educator, especially in the early learning space. We talk a little bit about, I think the key building blocks for inclusion and equity teaching, really number one, someone already called that out, right? Create a collaborative culture. And it looks so different with, the dynamic of your teaching team, the parents, the children you serve, your leadership on site, your co-teachers, right? It just in general, the world, right? So I challenge you to walk away to really think about, is my school right now collaborative? Am I collaborative with related services providers? If you have children with unique needs in the classroom or with identified special needs, some of them are receiving services, right? So when's the last time I talked to the speech therapist? Do I have time to talk to the speech therapist? Oh, I talked to the therapist, but I don't know what to do. And then how do we get there? Because those are pretty real. We're also challenged with time and space to really sit down and reflect internally and also externally with the folks that's around us. So I'm really, really big on reflective practices. And embrace co-teaching model. We all heard about co-teaching, yeah? Some of us maybe were like, what do you mean I'm by myself? So I have to recognize our program, we've been running inclusion for a long time now, and we used to have amazing co-teaching teams for each classroom. We're talking about 20-something classrooms. And that means that we would have a general education teacher with a specialized, right, instruction, a teacher who has early childhood special ed credential, co-teach at all time in the classroom. To answer your question, the workforce has changed, right? So we don't have the capacity to have the special ed teacher in all the classrooms, so we had to really adapt with the workforce and move forward with it. Do we have challenges? Oh my gosh, every day, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about looking at, I will call out 4 specific models that really work in our early education. Think about how can we look at instruction and teaching maybe a little bit differently. And it's not a new concept, it's more about, oh wow, I haven't really done that. Can I try that? Oh, I can't try that because da-da-da-da-da. What can I do about that? And we'll talk about mindfulness teaching a little bit, address a little bit burnout, and ultimately grow today, hopefully a little bit, for you to be inspired. And then we'll talk a little bit about adaptation as well, just some ideas for you to think about if you want to be brave and like walk away with like something you want to try next week or something. So overall, what does inclusive education look like in the classroom, right? There's 4 pillars in our program. That's what we do. Of course, right, UDL is a big thing, and this is a workshop itself, right? But for us, UDL is actually the way of doing, so it's equity, right? Multisensory learning opportunities. I think this is something, it's interesting, it's like early education, I feel like there's a shift. We kind of, and I'm journalizing, so I want to recognize that. I realize, I don't know if it's because of pandemic, a lot of the old school teaching kind of got lost a little bit. Like, the music and movement, we don't spend enough time to do that. Why we teach children, freeze games or counting or weight. We do those things over and over again, right? Do we know why we're doing those things? Exactly. It's super fun. You get their attention. So I invite you to go back, witness. Am I doing more of this right now, or am I doing less of this right now? Or am I playing the music really loud just because I think children cannot hear me? So yes, self-control. So self-regulation is the most important thing for our young learners. And the reason why, one of the many reasons why, which I'm big advocate on teaching regulation skills through music. Pause and wait is a tool to teach self-regulation skills and impulses. Okay, so once again, kind of think and reflect. Is my team doing that right now? Do we not do that right now? And are we using our bodies with the kids? Are the children able to touch things? If you have children with unique needs sitting in the circle time, do you have something for them to look right away behind, like a teacher's right there, walking around circle time, having a duplicate of materials, like smaller version, but they can touch it? How many times you see children like getting up and then going to the board and they want to touch things, and we have educators saying, no, you have to go back. And then the teacher is loud and in front of everybody and everyone hear it, right? And it become a power struggle. So something for us to really think about. Adaptation, someone mentioned adaptation. Adaptation, modifications, so important. But they don't just come to us, right? So I think this one, it's very challenging because we all know that we need those things. But do we have those things, right? Do we have enough cube chairs for all the children? Do we have enough sensory toys in all the areas in the classroom? Do we allow children to just go to a calming area to just regulate, right? How do I use my calming area if I currently have one? Is it a way to manage behavior? Just be like, go to the calming area, you're gonna be okay. And then what happens like the next day? My tent broke. Or the child doesn't know how to use it. What do we teach the children? Is one of the teachers there to co-regulate? I think the biggest thing today I'm gonna really talk a lot about is co-regulation. Are we calm enough to co-regulate with kids, right? Do you have enough teachers where you have a couple kiddos having a hard time? You just go to the calming area, they just sit down. You don't even do much. You just sit and you say, let's just relax. It's really powerful to try that. But it takes courage to break the routine as well, right? But I want to go back a little bit about adaptation and modification because it also has to do with collaboration, right? If a child has OT, speech, PT, ABA, what are they using? How can we integrate those things in the classroom? If we're not able to, what would be another way we can maybe implement, right? And I will hopefully, soon enough, many programs will be able to have pushing services, meaning therapists can come in the classroom a little bit more, right? So we get a little bit more support as well. And I would love to share that if you have couple special, toys or equipment for children in the classroom, I would challenge you to think about, what about other children? Do they have access for those? So one of the things I always just have some pride about this is we have, parents come to us and they have children with unique needs, and when they go to kindergarten, the teachers know, the kindergarten teachers from other schools know they have came to our program because it has to do with compassion, has to do with understanding of differences, and that's what inclusion is all about. So the kindergarten teachers will tell us, oh my gosh, we can tell the kids come from your school because during circle time, when young children are still learning about school, right, the first 2 weeks is literally structure, they're just teaching structure, and you have kids who have absolutely amazing regulation skills, they just sit there and they wait, right? But then you have kids stop making fun of other children or being impatient. And then you have children ask, do we have cube chairs? They need cube chairs, right? Or do you have sensory toys? That helps them. So it's fascinating. All right, and then lastly, really create different learning opportunities, right? Can you teach concept during circle time that can translate to playground, outdoor space? Can you teach certain routine into a different, in a different environment? Can you teach text analysis during snack time? That's so fun. I don't know, I see something for you to think about as well, like looking at your classroom setup. Do I teach center activities only during center activities? Can those concepts be translated into a different routine? Is it maybe during the first 10 minutes of nap time that we're doing this as well, so we calm the children down? I mean, whatever, right? I'm just kind of thinking out loud, like how can we challenge ourselves to really think outside the box? So I love this. It's from University of Delaware. Teaching for inclusion signifies embracing difference, right? So it's a way of thinking and philosophy, really not so much about doing. Can you imagine a classroom where all children with abilities, they are all together learning, but they're just being together, but there's no interaction? I see that a lot, even in our own program. And people think that's inclusion. So inclusion is a sense of belonging. Of course, we all know that belonging. But how we do it is then equity. And for me, equity is about instruction and teaching. So the idea of equity is then really break it down. What does this kids need? If this kids need something, maybe other children can benefit from that as well. And that's inclusion because you're offering everything, right? That's also UDL. But teaching for equity allowed the differences to transform the way we think, teach, learn, and act, such that all experiences and ways of being are handled with fairness and justice. So inclusion is not about placement, it's not about just being together. And I'm guilty of that because when I say that, it's because we do have, back to workforce. We just can't have the capacity to teach the way we wanted to teach. So it's our job to really show up. Is it working? Right? What's working? What can we do differently? Any questions so far or comments? Yes. Thank you. Yeah, collaborative culture empowerment. We already talked a little bit about that in the beginning. So I would draw like a web, right? You're in the center, just an exercise for you to go home later or throughout the day. We'll play with your team. Who are we collaborating? Do I have a co-teacher right now? I have a co-teacher. How's our relationship? Do we have a strong relationship where we know exactly what's going on with nonverbal communication, right? Or how's my leader on site? How's my relationship with my leader? Do I feel like I have opportunity to ask for help all the time, or do I ask help too much, or do I have trust? Those are really important and brutal things to think about for our work. Healthy workforce comes with healthy children and healthy families, right? Yeah, I don't have answer for this either. I mean, I can go on about research and like what's best practices, but it's really not fair for me to just tell you what to do because you first have to have awareness of yourself as educator and your awareness of your program, your school culture. And then you can maybe break a change. And I'm telling every single one of you, including myself here, just a reminder, we can make a change if we want to. So here comes co-teaching models. And those are the 4 that I really, really love and have practiced and have worked with teachers on implementing them. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And I want to, again, break the habit a little bit. Those 4 ideas really doesn't have to have a specialized teacher in the classroom. If you do, that's like a bonus right now, right? For some of us, it's a bonus. But if you have a team of 3, or team of 2, I'm hoping you can kind of think about this to walk away. So 1 teach, 1 supports, right? Like a whole group. Typically, when I ask educators, what does it look like for you, especially in our preschool settings or early learning setting? Circle time, right? Anything else come to your mind? Yes, absolutely. Music and movement, maybe. What we did out there right now, the earthquake shake was just a large group, but just a lot more people, right? But we're adults, so we know exactly what to do. But children's, we need instruction and teaching. So you'll see, let's just say teacher A is the one who's actually teaching, facilitating, teaching new concept. Hopefully you have a teacher with you, if not 2, hopefully at least 1. You have a teacher in the back, right? Going around the circle or in the group, helping support, like prompting language. What do you need? Is it too loud for you? Or hopefully, again, having sort of duplicate materials you can show the children who needs a little bit more visual and tactile experiences. So I think I'm overgeneralizing, but my awareness is we do 1 teacher, 1 support quite often in preschool, early learning settings. Would you agree with that? Yeah, awesome. Station center activities, typically we call small groups or tabletops, however you define that. So this is where I really want to challenge you. And again, this is where workforce change has changed a little bit in terms of thinking. I'm noticing, it again depends on your program philosophy, right? Play-based, radio, whatever it might be for you. I'm noticing teachers tend to walk around the classroom when there is small group happening, and teachers are walking around. And then maybe it's like you go to a kid, maybe 10 seconds, just, oh, it's okay, everything's good. And then you tend to kind of shadow kids, might need a little bit of support, might have transitional challenges, or just in general, social emotional learning. But then we're just kind of manning the kids. So I want us to think about how can we intentionally design curriculum and small group activity. Children come to you, so you have hopefully 3 teachers, if not 2 teachers, right? You're sitting at the table with the kids, you're actually teaching them, engaging them, and using adaptation that can be helpful for certain children, and you're facilitating a learning experience. And this is where I think I am so excited about to continue to through this with our teachers, because it's about mind shifting and it's about intentional teaching, right? So you might have a table where it's more open-ended, right? But then open-ended doesn't mean that the children don't need support. And what it may look like, it again depends on how your teaching style is and your co-teachers and your program philosophy. But I encourage you to think about like, okay, do I design my curriculum during this time where I'm kind of just walking around? Or do I have opportunity to actually sit and teach skills? Parallel teaching is so interesting. I personally have done this many times over my career, and we have some teachers right now actually trying parallel teaching. So parallel teaching is where you separate 2 groups, right? Typically equal amount of the children. You have 2 teachers, you're teaching the same concept, but you break into groups. So could be you're doing cooking project, and let's say you have kids of, I don't know, maybe a group of 16 or 18 or 12, and you have 2 teachers, and you do 6 and 6 if you have, a group of 12. And you're doing exactly the same curriculum, but your teaching might be different because based on your personality, right? And then what I will also ask about that is, did you get consent from the other teacher? We're gonna be doing cooking projects, right? Because if you assign someone who doesn't know how to cook and doing cooking project, most likely it's not gonna be as joyful. Because we want teachers to do things they also enjoy doing. And I will hope when we do parallel teaching, if you do have children with unique needs in the group, both of the teachers know exactly, who children's needs are, right? Because that comes with collaboration, communication, and strategies. Alternative teaching is one of my favorite. I think this is where I think a lot of time, if there is a special ed teacher in the classroom, right? Typically, a teacher will bring small group of children, maybe it's 3, 4. You have peer modeling, you're maybe teaching turn-taking game. Maybe you're teaching certain concept that require a little bit more smaller group. You're manipulating the materials in some ways, and then the larger group might be doing something, again, very different. Maybe it's relaxing, they're just on the rock, and then they're listening to some classical music for about 10 minutes, and then they can talk about what the experience are. And then the kids will then go back to the larger group, and then you switch. Maybe some kids is gonna come again. So you can alternative manipulate children's group in some way based on dynamic and what you're teaching. I'm curious, have anyone tried any of those that work before or maybe not work before? Yeah, please.
You should have. Okay. So I am part of the co-teaching model right now. I'm coming in as a special education teacher, and I can tell what you're saying. I'm experiencing it right now that you have your own classroom before. I'm a special day class teacher, and now going to a co-teaching model, and the teacher she knows how it works in her classroom. Me coming in as another person with a lot of ideas and all. And Head Start is kind of like very They have different policies, like special ed. For me, coming in as free as a bird, I can say that I do everything that can engage my kids. Oh, okay. In the Head Start classroom, it's more of like you following their lead. You cannot just do, although you're following certain curriculum, it's a little limited. Sometimes in my, I'm talking about my current experience, but it's hard to manage. Like, this is my teaching style, and then I don't want to overpower or overshadow the general teacher or something like that, and it makes me feel like, am I overdoing this? Or, and that the response of the kid is totally different from the response of the teachers. And my staff can see that. And I said, how do I tone it down a little bit for her not to feel that way? Because it's really hard. But I think she's more open now to like the idea. Now she's kind of like getting the ideas that I'm doing to the kids because she knows that the engagement is a little bit different. But it's kind of like a challenge. As much as I wanna back off a little bit, but it's harder when you're a education teacher.
Yeah, what I heard was it's great, but it's hard. It takes time and work. And that's why I think, there's a research, right? Always say something like co-teaching is a marriage, right? It literally is a marriage. So I just keep going back to the collaboration. One of the things that really is important, I didn't put it in my presentations because I don't want to I don't want to have any liability, but like, we learned this during this conference today, we need to have an hour planning time, we need to have once a month staff development hours, and then the program cannot offer that. So you have to kind of think about. I always tell my teachers, you have to ask what you need. If you don't ask, most of the people just think that you're good, right? So I want you to kind of think about as a collective, do I have planning time once a week with my co-teacher? Because all of this require co-plan. If you don't have co-planning, you just come and say, I'm gonna do this, most likely it's gonna have a challenging relationship. But I appreciate what you're saying because it does require work. And I keep going back to the idea of intentional teaching, because we know intentional teaching is important and we know teaching works. But how do we, again, I keep saying, how do we get there? Who's around me in my little village can help me get there and help us get there, right? So I encourage you to think about those, and then if you haven't tried one of those, maybe try, see how it goes. Or you want to try something, but you can't try something. Again, I ask you why, right? Think about why. Yeah, I already kind of mentioned that. Really, how do we help students get access? There's really not magic. And we can provide all the adaptations and modification in the classroom. Like, oh, the OT says we need weighted lab every hour need to have a 10 minutes sort of weighted lab on a child's lap, or a child needs a sensory diet throughout the day, and it looks like an hour of, I don't know, decompressing, mini tapping on the body. I'm totally just making this up right now, but we can offer that. But if you just offer that, but we don't teach children how to really use those materials, it's almost pointless. So that's why I came in today. I was like, oh, I have all the strategies we can talk about, but I was like, actually, we have to really go back to our intention while we're offering those adaptations. Because I've seen classrooms where we have all the materials, and the teacher just put it out there, but then kids don't know how to do it. They might put it on their lap for like a minute, and they're like, what's going on, right? So then I asked, hey, have you talked about why do we need this? If you need this, how can we use it? And when you use it, how does it feel like? If you don't like it, let's talk about it. All the sequences. And again, intentional, and we have to plan them. All those things, we have to plan them. Sometimes I remember thinking when I was a teacher too in the classroom, I sometimes just put things on the table because I didn't have time to plan. So I always tell teachers, that's okay, I guess, right? In some ways. However, If you have intentional curriculum that's on the table, but there's no engagement, I think that's a question to ask. Is that intentional? One of my mentors always told me, you don't need to really have materials to teach children. You can just sit and just be with them. Just be with them, right? Be with them. Opening up the conversation. And if a child does not have language, how do we do about that? What are the materials? Maybe just some tactile things to open up the conversation. So I'm not suggesting like, oh, get rid of all the materials. It's more like, how are we using the materials really? You know? So a little something, right? I mean, a lot of us maybe already know this and practicing them already, right? Something that can help overall in general classroom management. For me, those are overall inclusive practices. And it's something I feel like all the classrooms should have. Not so much just for children with needs need to have, because I think about access and how we involve the community in the classroom to also understand this is for everyone, but also help somebody. We feel good because we're using it together. So you're creating membership in the classroom. Membership, it's about how a person and a student and a child relate to the community and the classroom as a whole in the society. Right? So how many of us have gone through a party where you show up and you're like, I don't belong here. We don't want our kids feel that way. But if we have a room of children just being together, or we say inclusion, and there's no engagement, it feels that way. It feels like we don't belong. Kids don't belong. So again, I invite you to kind of think about those. So visual schedules, icons is like our typical, right, adaptations and things. And again, I then ask, how do you use them? We just talk a little bit about modification and adaptations already. Instructional language, this is where I really care so much about. Are we saying certain children's names so many times already? Just because this kid is really, really challenging and we're saying this kid's name over and over and over again. And then the kid is crying out loud, like having a temper tantrum, and we think he's having a hard time, but this kid might be saying, I'm not bad, but you're saying I'm bad. Yeah, I've seen a lot of those. And that will then relate to mindfulness teaching. When we have something like that happen in the classroom, how can we stay calm even though we're not calm? Regulate ourselves first so we can co-regulate with kids. And then you can use all the things that we have right now to co-regulate. That's listed here. Again, physical space is important, right? Do kids have enough room to walk around? Do we have enough materials? Do we have too much materials? Do we have stairs for children? If they need stairs to, go up somewhere. Collaboration with service providers, we talked about that already. And it really be creative. Sometimes every school year comes, right? We need money to buy things. And I was one of those. We need money. And I learned so quickly, a lot of the adaptation and modifications really don't require purchasing things, right? For example, sensory items, right? Family engagement. Ask family, we need socks without holes. And then you just collect all the socks and you can put beans, you can put Play-Dohs, you can put rice, you can put whatever you want in the socks and you tie it up, become a sensory bin, right? Just an example. So think about what's around us and naturally can be adapted in the environment. It really doesn't have to be expensive. But we love new toys too. We love new things as educators. Some of you might already know just some example of visual schedule, what it can look like, right? Overall classroom schedule, individualized schedule. Some children could use the one on the left, maneuver schedule themselves, maybe a little bit more higher needs. They can do that. Again, some of the things, right? And I just love break it down. You gotta break it down, especially the kids we work with. Text analysis is a big thing, even for preschoolers. environment support, right? Cube chairs, sitting cushions, headphones. What I really want to talk about is we only got 5 minutes left, maybe not 4, but if you currently already have a calming area in the classroom, for older students, we call brain breaks, right? I hear some educators not overly, they also call brain breaks, but I personally like to say a body break for preschool students. If you already have a calming area, how are you using them? Do I like that? If I was an adult, do I want to go there to calm down? Because what you want to cultivate is a place that's really calm and have a sense of safety. So if you already have that, think about like, what's the lighting? Do I have pillows? Is that a place I allow children have autonomy to go throughout the day to just relax? I don't know how many times I walk into a classroom, I see a child maybe in a calming area, but they're actually listening what's happening, but they are regulating themselves. It's so powerful when I see that, and just brings so much joy for me because they're learning in a different way. And if you don't currently have a calming area, what do I need if I want to have that? How do I do that? And I want to emphasize, calming area is not a way to manage behavior, because that's what a little bit misunderstanding with a lot of educators who start really using calming area as a way to be like, if a child's having a temper tantrum, and you go to a calming area, and then what happened? The child end up having longer temper tantrum because no one's there to regulate with him, or her, or they, right? So lastly, really going back to the teacher burnout and workforce, healthy workforce, we have to be so aware of our own feelings and thoughts when we are in the classroom setting. How are we feeling when there's a child crying for 20 minutes and I don't know how to help this child? Am I angry right now? Am I upset? I'm visibly like upset, and everyone can see me, right? How many of us, I know that when you go to school, you're like, oh my God, this teacher is gonna be upset today because yesterday she was already really upset. I know, yeah, it's real. So I tell teachers, imagine, this is so hard, but imagine maybe you're in a happy place on the beach, on the mountain, but you're co-regulating with the kids. So I cannot stress enough. There's no magic like work for this, but you have to be so mindful about how you feel in order to show up to support children. Let go of the power struggle. Please don't blame the children, their action and their work, because they don't know. We have to be there to teach them. And trust and boundaries with the coworkers, the children, and of course the whole school in general. You have to build trust in order to have the collaborative culture. And please ask for support. All the superheroes also need support. You're all superheroes in your day-to-day work, but we all need support. And co-create. I really do believe in co-creating in terms of in the classroom setting. We're co-creating with families, our work, our admin, our school leaders, ourselves, and our children. Lastly, just please, I hope you involve and empower and continue to just be inspired as educator no matter what you do. And thank you for all the work that you do and show up. Thank you.